You want to make sure that the family, huh? Oh, for what? I gotta. You see that? What? Right there. The blue snowball. Right over there on that corner. Most of the time. No, that's an electronic. Oh.
You have any fruit was customary, put up and put it on the table? Did any of y'all bring any fruit? Any vegetables? You don't mess it, right?
Lola said she ate hers.
I know.
This is our divine conversation, and on second Sunday, Brother Nation Builder Kwame gave our message, and mathematics. Mathematics. Now continue that conversation, and we'll ask Brother Kwame if he would lead us. And do you want to go forward?
You want me to open that back door, Elder? You want to open the back door so people come in through that way?
All right, so last time we introduced you to a few is from ancient mathematics found in Kemet. I took you through some of the and how they might solve a division problem, multiplication problem. A problem that we looked at, or one of the problems that we looked at, back then it would have been referred to as an aha kind of problem. Means that it was a problem that dealt with finding an unknown. And it was a linear expression. What that means is that it's a problem like E equals 7, or 7 equals 4. And so you have an unknown, usually expressed by X as we do it today. And so, and then there was a problem I took you through, it was an aha problem, and also referred to as position or false assumption. What that meant was that if you had in parentheses just 1/5, and then outside of the parentheses of some number is 10, it's like today is in parentheses 1/5, you close the parentheses because that's the unknown, and then you'd solve for. Now we do it, doing it today. Many of you have had some algebra. So everybody's had some algebra. Good. Okay, so just reminding you that position was that you would basically guess and answer in, and then see what the result would be. Result wasn't correct by whatever you needed to make it correct. I know this is probably, you guys are like, what in the hell is this brother talking about, right? If go to the board, please.
We're looking for a marker.
Oh, we're looking for a marker. All right. So,
Right, Grace?
one might want to be sure. One might be sure. All right, so so anyway, let me do it this way. So a simple problem like plus 3 equals 4. So on the count of 3, what would X be? 1, 2, 3. X plus 3 equals 4. Count of 3, what would X be? 1, 2, 3. So let's say I guess that it's 3. And so I'm saying, instead of saying, 1 plus 3 equals 4, I'm going to say 3 plus 3 equals 4. So I say, my guess is 3. So I put in 3 and I say, well, 3 plus 3. Well, I know 6 isn't 4. So I have to subtract 2 from 6 to get 4. And I also have to subtract 2 guess to get the correct answer. Correct. So, false position or false assumption. And again, one of the world lessons we learn from that is this beatdown that we've taken over the many centuries, scared to dive into solving our problems, being wrong. The idea that we take from this this particular aha problem or this algebra problem is that our ancestors said it's okay to be wrong. Now that you're off the mark, then you make the proper adjustments to get where you need to be. So that's one quote unquote life lesson that we learn from that. And the main reason why to do this on math was because I want us to understand how the mind works. And maybe I'm, effective here. Who works? But the idea is that reasoning. There's certain times when in a and those who know better will say, well, why are we arguing? Because we're both saying the same thing, using different perspectives, different words, or what have you. One of the, let's see, where should I start here? Start with the idea that, let's say we understand, when I was a kid, I barely believed that 0.9999999 ad infinitum equals 1. Believe that today.
I do. Buying gas, 0.9 is rounded up.
So we got some people talking about rounding it up and that kind of thing. You ever find that marker or anything?
Oh, no. Yeah, she went to get the, she got to erase the board.
Okay.
She went to get the.
Should have brought some scrap paper for y'all, but
We got scrap
We in
paper.
the school.
We got a school. We in the school. We got more scrap paper.
yeah, well they need it and a pencil too.
We got pens. You got. Remember, we got the books from last time.
Well, yeah, those are what we need.
All right, cool. Can you pass these out? Would you?
Now my will be in full effect when we commence.
Just so you know, we have a parent and the two sons here at all of the children.
Welcome, welcome.
How old are you?
Excellent,
And I was told they done that.
excellent. That's even more fun. So they weren't here for the Sabe yet, were they?
No, they weren't here.
All right,
for Sabe
so-
yet, but they
so
did that
family-
with children event.
So family, this is mainly for our children. So been through this, you understand. But this is mainly for our children, for the 9 and 12-year-old. Start from the beginning of what this lecture would have been here last week or the week, of the Sabiet. So let me know when the children are booked and are ready to commence.
They're getting ready. Get out of
I'm sorry?
Thank you. That's the mom.
Yes, this is
And we've got
So-
some whiteboard space for you.
say that again?
We have some whiteboard space for you.
Okay, so this is a statement that was by Arthur C. Clarke. Who knows who Arthur C. Clarke was? Say something if you
I'll
do.
say.
Clap one time or something. I know Elder Alona clapped once.
Yeah.
So. Arthur C. Clarke was or one of the things he was a sci-fi writer, a science fiction writer. He made a statement that stuck with me. The statement was that any sufficiently advanced technology appear as magic. Again, I repeat, any sufficiently advanced technology would appear as magic. So, who all knows what's coming next?
It's magic.
Right. All right, so, I'm sorry, what are the children's names? Uriah and Asaiah. All right. Uriah and Asaiah. Write down a number on your I want you to multiply that number by 2. I want you to add 8 to that number. And if you need more time, just holler and say you need more time. The answer you have, I want you to divide that by 2. Now I want you to subtract the number you first started with.
Was it that last one again?
subtract the number you first started with. So whatever number you started with, I want you to subtract that from that last answer you had. And how are you doing, Uriah? And you, Asaya? I want you both to compare your answers. Okay, take your time. And it's okay if, you know, if he needs help, then we give him help. Issue here. What we're exemplifying is that any sufficiently advanced technology has magic.
We did 60 at first. We're gonna make it 6. Is that okay? Or would you keep it at 60?
The idea is not to let me know what number you pick.
We're gonna make a different number.
Number you choose, do not let me know.
No, they were gonna make it.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
When I see the different people's names up there, that means they're like on Facebook?
Yeah, they watching live.
Okay.
All right. Uriah and Asaya, could you compare your answers?
They're smiling.
Why are they smiling? Why are you smiling?
You got dimples and everything showing. Giggling.
Why are you smiling? He said. You both got the same answer.
Look what he put up. Oh.
Yes, sir.
Now that seems like magic, right?
It is.
Remember the statement. Any sufficiently advanced technology would appear, seem like magic. It's not really magic, it's what you know. Okay? That's where it would begin.
The elders are up there working too.
Yeah, so we're helping each other.
Okay.
You collectively work.
I'm not gonna do the birthday trick.
Right, don't do the birthday trick.
Excuse me. But there's also a birthday trick where you do some math steps, and by the end of your calculations, I'm able to tell you what number you picked and how old you are.
That's so awesome.
And so there is that as well. But that's just to show that, you know, and that particular trick that I just did with Uriah and Asaya, that comes out of the Papyrus of Amos, also known as the Rhine Mathematical Papyrus, in where they have a miscellany or okay, let's tone it back a little bit. where they have a bunch of different kinds of problems. All right. And so our ancestors also played with math, as you can see, by doing these kinds of little tricks. And I'm going to try to recite it again, but at the beginning of the Rhine mathematical papyrus, also known to us as the Papyrus of Amos, he makes a statement, and the statement goes something like this. Tep Haseb Enhat M Ketu Rek Netu Nabet Sinket Chetau Nabet. And how that translates is that it's speaking of mathematics, but it goes to say that it is the foremost right and true method of things or nature. All that is a mystery, all that is a secret, all that is hidden. That's what our ancestors said about mathematics. It is the foremost right and true method to investigate nature. All that is a mystery, all that is a secret, all that is hidden. Now, from there, I would introduce the idea that many of us are a very intuitional people. But there are some things where our intuition falls just a little short if we're not, let's say, keenly tuned. And so I'm going to give you a little problem, and I just, think of what you think the answer might be. Now, and this is just intuitionally, what your answer would be. So, is in Columbus, and his wife Charlotte is in, let's say, Indiana somewhere. Now he's hurrying to see her, right?
Word.
So he's traveling 60 miles an hour to get there to see her. Now on his way back, he's chilling, right? So he travels 40 miles an hour to get back. And the question was, what was his average rate of speed going there and back? Yeah, intuition would say it again, Elder. Yeah, that's what our intuition would tell us. You want to know what the correct answer is?
What is it?
48.
How come?
Excellent answer. Or excellent answer, and that is an excellent question. I particularly introduced this problem for Uriah and Asaiah because these are the kinds of questions you will see on your SAT and ACT and all that kind of stuff. What we refer to them as the simple kinds of, what do you call them, rate times time equals distance. Yeah, y'all remember that, right?
Yeah.
And can give you a headache sometimes, but yeah, so you want to see this problem worked out? All right, you want to go to the ward, Elder Alona?
I'm at the board.
Okay. All right, man. You gonna rock it? All right, baby.
Unless you prefer Elder Alona.
No, baby, you know I do, right? You know, now see, there you go, clowning on the brother.
I'm ready.
All right, so
Get the board, bro.
I don't know. All I know is how fast he was going to get there.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And all I know about the distance is that, do me a favor, babe, draw a horizontal line.
That's enough. I know what that.
And on the left side, you know, you put a little point because that's where Kwame starts. On the right side, you put a little point because that's where Charlotte is. Now, I want you to let the family know that I don't know necessarily what the distance is, but I'll call the distance D. And the speed going there was 60 miles an hour, right? So I have, but I don't necessarily know how much time it took me to get there. So I have, using the rate times time equals distance thing, I have 60 times T1, which is the time it took me to get there, equals D.
Equals D as in David or G as in B as in distance?
D as in distance. And the equation for my coming back would be 40 times T2 equals D. Now, I do this little trick and I manipulate that first equation to say T1 equals D over 60. And I do likewise to the second equation, manipulating it so it reads T2 or T sub 2 equals D over 40. So now I have the time it took me to get there and the time it took me to get back. Now, the total time is T1 plus T2, correct?
Right.
So now, in parentheses, I'm going to put D over 60 plus D over 40.
Parentheses?
Yes.
That whole thing?
Yes.
D over 60, say it again?
Open parentheses, D over 60 plus D over 40, close parentheses. And then I'll put an R in front of that to represent what my time is going to be. I'm sorry, how fast I'm going. Excuse me. So now I have R, open parentheses, D over 60 plus D over 40, close parentheses, equals, well, the time or the distance it took or that I traveled to get there was D. To get back was D. So how many D's is that?
2.
That's 2 D's. So all that's equal to 2D. So now I can simplify several ways, but let us do this. I have D over 40 and D over 60. So let us try multiplying both sides by 120.
I gotta clear some more board space.
Now I want you to notice what I just said. Remember, I said my op is in full effect for all of this. So if I multiply 120 on one side, I also have to do it on the other side to maintain that balance or that, equilibrium in this case. Let me know when you're ready to continue, love.
All right, so I need to take this. How do you want me to write out the equation? We're
So,
multiplying both sides by 120.
Yes. So you can put R times open parentheses D over 40 or 60 plus D over 40 close parentheses times 120 equals 2D times 120. Well, the right side is fairly easy to clean up real quickly. 120 is 240, so we have 240D. You're right. Are you familiar with how to distribute? I'm sorry? Okay. Distributing is like, in this case, where you see where the 120 is, the 120 is, I would multiply it by the first thing to the left in the parentheses. So I would say D over 40 times 120.
The 60.
I'm sorry?
The 60. The 60 is on the left. Is the first thing.
On the right. I misspoke. Forgive me.
Okay.
So first thing on the right there. I was thinking to the left of the 120 or parenthesis there. But anyway, so there's that. The 40 and the 120, they kind of cancel each other out in a sense. Anyway, 120 divided by 40 is simply 3. So the D over 40 simply becomes 3D. And multiplying the 120 by the D over 60, well, 120 D over 60 is simply 2D. So now, if everything is correct, what we should have now is R times open parenthesis 2D plus 3D close parenthesis equals 240D. Well, what's 2D plus 3D? Say it like you mean it. 5D. So now we can erase that 2D plus 3D and just put 5D. So now we have R times 5D. And that's equal to 240D. Well, we have D on both sides of that equation, right?
Yeah.
So I could divide both sides by D. And what that ends up being, okay, let's try to see if we know what we're talking about here. Who knows what D divided by D is? I heard it.
1.
It's 1. So on the right-hand side, we simply have 240. On the left-hand side, we simply have R times 5. So now we have R times 5 equals 240. So if I divide both sides by 5, so R times 5 divided by 5 would simply leave me with R on the left-hand side of the equal sign. And 240 divided by 5, I'm going to leave that to my wife to figure out. And
That's what they for.
And let me know when you got the answer, man.
48.
That's that cooperative.
See, but that's what's up. That's what's up. See, I said my wife, but you sisters knew what was up. So as you see, and maybe it's not so plain to see until you've had the experience of working more with rate times time equals distance kinds of problems. But this is something that you'll see later. And I'm introducing it to you sooner than later. But anyway, as you saw, our intuition would have told us 50, but in truth, it was 48. Now, there are times when 50 and 48, there's no practical difference between them. However, there are times when there is a significant difference between them. And how many of you know who Katherine Johnson is? Yeah? Yeah. So if I were to take her between this and told her that there's no difference between 48 and 50,
She would have read you the rhyme.
now you know that's right. You know that's right. Because when you're trying to plan orbiting and landing and things of that nature, that kind of difference can mean life or death, basically. And so, but that was an example of showing you how intuition is good, but it is also good. Now, y'all ain't gonna hear me quote Ronald Reagan. All right, y'all ain't gonna hear me quote him. But the one thing I will quote him on is, he said to trust but verify. Right?
Word.
Trust but verify.
Who said that?
Ronald Reagan. You just made me say his name again, didn't you? All right, so yeah, that's an example of how our intuition might fall short in some cases. Now, I'm going to do one more thing of showing you how when you start off with something false, you can almost come up with anything being true. So bear with me, y'all. You ready, honey bunny?
I'm ready.
All right, so we got, put up there, A equals B.
8 equals B.
A as in anesthesia.
Uh-oh. Using
Yeah,
those big words.
No,
There you go.
that's that, you know, that's that girl around the corner. Anesthesia, man. Come on now.
We must be in the hood.
So you got A equals B.
Okay.
Now, how many of you would ever suggest that anywhere I see an A, I can just automatically substitute a B in there for it?
There's all kinds of text.
Bingo! Come here, woman. I want to kiss you.
Better not write Charlotte up at the board, man.
Context, yes, context is everything. So let's say I write Elder Alona's name on the board, A-L-O-N-A. Would it be cool to substitute a B
No.
wherever I see an A?
No.
No.
You have the lump.
Unless we got an agreed upon code.
Right, right. Unless you're writing in some kind of code or something, then not appropriate. Well, in this, we're taking this at face value here. And when we take this at face value, and we suggest that A equals B, then we're going to show you what kind of fun things or fun thing can come out of A equals B. So I want you to multiply both sides of the equation by A. So multiply A by A and So family, math is a funny thing, and it kind of makes you behave in a certain kind of way. So I'm going to tell my wife exactly how I want her to write this. So when you write this, you put A to the left of A, and then you have your equal signs after the second A,
Yes.
and then an A, and then B.
Done.
Okay. Now, again, family, this is a strict kind of math thing. It has something to do with the commutative property, for those of you who know, but not in all maths do the commutative property work. So in other words, may not necessarily be 4 times 3 in all math expressions. Okay? All right, so we have A times A equals A times B, right? We multiplied A on both sides, right?
Right.
So it should still be equal, correct?
Correct.
So let's simplify that left-hand side. Rather than saying A times A, we're just going to simplify it and say A squared. So A squared equals A times B. Now, we're going to add this expression to both sides of the equation. So, on the left side of the equation, you have A squared. And I want you to add this to the right side of that A squared. So it's going to look like A squared plus A squared minus 2AB. And then on the left side of the equal sign, we're going to have AB plus A squared minus 2AB. Now, did I just add the same thing to both sides of that equation?
Yes.
Family? I'm not hearing any answers.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but yeah, that's what you said.
Look, I trust you. You can see better than I can.
But no, you can see what I can't see.
So again, my is in full effect. Whatever I'm doing on one side of the equation must also happen on the other side of the equation if I am to keep that equal sign there.
Correct.
All right? Now we're going to simplify the left-hand side a little bit. A squared plus A squared is how many A squares?
2.
So just write that as 2A squared. So now we have 2A squared minus 2AB on the left side of the equal sign. On the right side of the equal sign, we're going to simplify this a bit, because right now we have A squared minus 2AB. Well, AB minus 2AB, does anybody know what that is?
Minus AB. AB minus 2AB is minus AB.
There you go. So now it's going to be on the right-hand side, A squared minus AB.
A squared.
So now, honey bunny,
Yes, sir.
you remember how to factor out a 2?
Pretend like I don't.
Okay.
That's right. Welcome to it. Welcome to it. That's right. That was the best answer I heard. Right. I got that.
All right, so the left-hand side becomes 2 open parenthesis a squared minus ab. You ready? So you got 2 open parenthesis a squared minus ab close parenthesis equals a squared minus ab. Now I want y'all to look at that real closely and see if you can see what's up. Anybody see anything that's somewhat disturbing?
It's out of balance, right?
But everything we did, what we did to one side, we also did to the other, right?
Well, I don't. If it's not balanced, how could we? Oh, there you go with that laugh.
All right, all right, look, okay, so if you have an idea of what you think is wrong with that, what you see there, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Well, if you're looking at, it's supposed to look the same, right? It's supposed to be the same. So we started off with 2 close parentheses, a squared minus ab close parentheses equal, and we had a squared minus ab, but we didn't have that 2 over there. We got the 2 to begin with, but we don't have it on the other end. I'm just looking at what's up there. It ain't the same.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that means though.
Mm-hmm. Now,
If we were just doing regular math, I'm sure this is regular math. How we're taught in school, which I don't think is advanced. I would divide each side by a squared minus ab.
That's regular.
all right, so if we divide both sides by a squared minus ab, let's start with the right-hand side first. A squared minus ab divided by a squared minus ab. What's that going to be?
1.
That's 1. So put a 1 on the right-hand side of the equal sign.
Right.
The right-hand side.
Right.
And now we're looking at the left-hand side. And we divide that by a squared minus ab.
You got another problem.
So what's left?
2.
2. So what do we have, family?
2 equals 1.
Now, I started this example off by saying, if you begin with something that is just false,
You can make it right.
you can make it seem like anything is possible. Now,
But it's gotta make sense though, right?
look, remember, we always have to understand the context in which we're speaking, first of all. Now, part of the problem that, I'm sorry, who was that who suggested that we divide both sides by a squared minus a?
The mom of the 2 brilliant.
She has a name.
I don't know.
Tiandra. Now, Tiandra, that was an excellent suggestion, but the danger is this. We started off with a false assumption that A equals B. If A equals B, then what's A times B?
1. No, it would be.
We don't AB.
No, it would be 2 times a.
What's B equal to?
A.
Substitute A in there for B. So what's AB equal to?
A equals A.
A. What's A? What do we call say AA is?
A squared.
A squared. Right. So what you would have then is A squared minus A squared. What's A squared minus A squared? Now, what's the #1 rule you learn about division?
You can't divide by 0.
Exactly. And that's what our beloved Tiandra, just suggested.
I do. I said it was like that. They teach in school. I know.
No, but it was an excellent suggestion.
It was what is it? Condition. Suggestion.
Right. But understand this. It doesn't matter whether you divide it by 0 or not. two of one thing is not going to be the same as one of another. And if you believe that, for every $1 I have, you give me 2. And who wants to take me up on that, by the way? All right, so that is an example again of how if you start off with a false assumption or something of that nature, then you could almost say anything and convince somebody of something just absurd. Okay?
I sense a conversation coming on.
No conversation here. Excuse me. All right, so we talked about, okay, so this is where we get into some of the basic ideas behind what I refer to as proof techniques in math. So, can I have 2 elders come up here, please? To my left.
2 elders,
Those
2 elders, come
those
on
who
now.
are capably mobile. Yeah, she make me look good too.
One on each side.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so family. If I say that either who's on this side? Barbara. Okay. If I say that Elder Barbara or Elder Phyllis are elders in the Kawi family village, are we going to have an argument about that? All right. I need you to come over here. Brother Hatim, or no, not Brother Hatim. Who's a young person here? Where's Shamar at? Come here. You got camera? Okay. Are you free? Who's free?
I'm free. I'm free.
All right, come up here, bro. Tatiana? Tiana.
Come on.
All right. So, okay. So, family, if I say that Elder Phyllis or Brother Hatim is an elder in the Tawi family village, are we going to have an argument about that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it. See, this is why so many of us get into problems, because we don't understand the logic behind the language. So if I say that A or B is something, all I need is one of them to be something for that statement to be true. Do you understand me?
Break that down, brother.
If I say that Elder Phyllis or Hatim is an elder in the Tawi family village, all I need is one of those 2 individuals to be elders.
Correct.
We use this in math all the time, where you'll throw out something bogus, or not necessarily throw out something bogus, but all I have to do to make that statement true is pick an elder in the Tawi family village, and then I can pick a baby. And because I say the baby or the elder is an elder, you guys get distracted by the baby. Right. And that's, of course, referred to as a
Pickle?
A disjunction. That too. That too. Okay, so now, if I were to say, well, I mean, we already cleared up the first one. The first one was what was referred to as where you have both that are true. So when I said Elder Phyllis and Elder Barbara, either Elder Phyllis or Elder Barbara are elders in the Tawi family village, immediately, yeah, that's true. You were thinking it's true because both were elders in the Tawi family village. But remember, it only takes one. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to change that or into an and. Mm-hmm. So if I say that Elder Phyllis, and Hatem are elders in the Tawi family village, then what's wrong with that statement? And why is it not true?
Because you're not elder.
Right. So that means that when I'm saying that both are, it only takes one to prove that statement wrong. Again, this is the math logic. And this is why, again, a lot of us get in trouble when we take the meta nature with Banachi, because he insists on this understanding. And some of us, well, you know, we do what we do, right? Yes, ma'am.
One of the things also is that we don't listen.
Absolutely.
That's our big.
Absolutely.
We don't listen, and that's one of the things the meta nature eats into. Gotta listen.
I mean, we learned when we first started it that, you know, yeah, Cedric.
Gotta listen. That's not what I asked you.
Right, right.
And there's a difference between listening to comprehend and listening to respond.
There you go. There you go. Well said. Well said. All right. So we talked about the idea of the or. We talked about the idea of the and. Now, the next few statements can get somewhat involved, but just suffer it through. I'm not going to torture you guys much longer, but I'll just cover this. So the so-called if-then statement, right? The conditional statement, and it's a curious it's curious in terms of how you deal with it, quote unquote, philosophically, and thus mathematically. What do I mean by that? So if I say, if my grass is wet, it rained last night, is that a true statement?
No.
Right. She says, not necessarily. Give me an example where that statement, you know, isn't necessarily true.
Sprinkler it.
The dog had to pee on the grass.
Do in the morning.
Right. So I heard sprinklers, dew, and
Or it could just be
the
snow.
iconic dog kissing on the grass. So, and so, yeah, you have that. Now, if I were to say, what's a good one? If I study the Medu Nature, I am studying the language of Kemet. Is that a true statement? Okay. Now, no, right. You know, and and one way that we check to verify if the statement is correct is we use this thing where, if I can remember what it's called, not the inverse, but the, oh man, it's slipping me. So basically, it would come out like this if I were to check it. So I say, if I study the Medu Nature, I am studying a language from Kemet. The way I would check that is I would negate the ending and negate the beginning. So I would say, yeah, and
Well,
you know, yeah.
I have a question. I hear exactly what you're saying, but I don't understand.
It's basically what we're saying is that the two statements I just said, if I study the Medu Nature, I'm studying a language from Kemet, or if I don't study a language from Kemet, I am not studying the Medu Nature. We're saying that those two statements are equivalent. Okay. They, in other words, they have the same truth value. And so a lot of times, well, using the statement we started, if the grass is wet, then it rained last night. Well, if it didn't rain last night, then the grass, then the grass isn't wet. Well, we know immediately of several examples on why the grass would be wet, right?
Right.
And so that's how we just, throw that out, so to speak. We don't give it any real thought in terms of its truth value. It just doesn't measure up. So that, again, that's an if-then statement. And how we doing on time?
Bro, we own the building.
Yeah, but okay. Well, let me wind down and just say that it's been awesome. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Math is fun.
Yes.
And, thank you all for your help, and especially my lovely honey bunny on the running. Give us a hand.
We ain't answer no questions, man. We ain't can't ask no questions.
Yeah. Ask questions.
Any questions? Those on Facebook that are still here, those that are here, do we have any questions for this brother? Because if you don't, I got some questions.
Yeah.
Brother Kimmy, Kwame.
Yes, sir.
How you doing, brother?
Doing well. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Absolutely.
Okay. What's that?
So,
Go ahead.
if somebody want to get in touch with you for tutoring, how they get in touch with you for tutoring?
Yes, you do tutoring.
Oh, that's a good too.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do we find your information?
For tutoring, you come through Kawi.
I got a question for you.
Or else you can come to me after the session.
What you doing, big head?
So that's a middleman, right? Either come to Kwame or lose his number, if you have mine, I'll be like, yeah.
This is for me.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Why is it important to teach our young people how to fail? Because you kind of
It's I understand exactly. See, again, context is everything. It's when I consider some of the things that we could have done in Tawi and haven't necessarily done it, I believe it's in large part we're scared to fail.
Ashe.
And so, and again, part of that is in the culture that we've all grown up in. They wanted to make us seem less than for getting something incorrect. But family, when you go to school with these people, when you observe them in their element, not only do they encourage them, I mean, wow. I mean, the evidence of what I'm hardly want to speak of is in the likes of the Orange Man. How does someone so ignorant so ignorant get to the places where he's been?
Is this dialogue?
Yeah, we dialogue.
Back and forth, please.
Spoke with you last night, Elder Emily Bailey.
Yes.
Brought you up because I was trying to understand all the events, and she was like, very brilliant, intelligent, and somehow we talked about education in the European ways, everybody wants to know what your outlays are or what you've accomplished in order to determine whether they'll listen. And I just decided to end my traditional education. I was in medical school because after so many degrees, people assume because I've paid for letters and a piece of paper that I understand or I have some type of wisdom or knowledge, but that's not the case. And so, especially when it deals with medical education, and we go as it involves our well-being in our temple, in our livelihood, and we believe that because this individual is a doctor, practicing, right, a practicing doctor, that they actually have the information for us to get well, but that's not necessarily the case. But somebody who is from our village, who has been blessed with healing, or who has been blessed with wisdom and knowledge of mathematics as you are, people like to look past in their culture because you don't have the necessary accolades to, I don't know.
That's right. No, you're right. You're right. You're right.
You said it just right.
And so I decided I'm not going to be a doctor because you will listen to me first in my voice because I'm not a doctor. Listen to what I have to say.
Right.
Without those letters. And we have to advocate for one another and know that, yes, we can applaud our brothers and sisters who go the traditional route and who complete that because that's an amazing feat. But we have to applaud the ones of us that are gifted and have wisdom. We're all gifted and have wisdom, but
that's right.
Affirm that. Continue to affirm that.
Now, I want to just say the reason I asked about the failure piece, going back to your point, is that one of the things that we need our young people to understand is that Kwame didn't wake up all of a sudden and realize that he could automatically do quadratic equations. You know what I'm saying? Or everybody in here that's good at something. There was a process that we went through. And one of the things we kind of grooming our kids to believe is that you're so smart. You know what I'm saying? We kind of lying to our kids. When we know some of these kids is dumb as hell, we lying to them and we're saying that they're so smart when in fact we need to make sure they understand that getting to this level takes a lot of work. That's right. Getting to the doctor takes a lot of work, regardless of whether you're going through school or whatever, but that requires failure. That's why it's important that we get back to our principles, because in our principles, it prepares us for failure. You know what I'm saying? You can't talk about the Nguza Saba. You can't talk about creativity without being willing to fail. You can't do this. He's sitting up here doing these mathematical equations. I'm looking up here like this, and he's just looking up in the sky and laughing and giggling and shit. I'm like, what? You know what I'm saying? But that demonstrates mastery to our kids. And that's something we need to make sure they understand. You don't wake up like that. You don't wake up and be a Michael Jordan. You don't wake up and be somebody that's the best in what you do because you were born like that. And this is what makes it hard for our kids to fail, because we get them into school, because we're in the school right now. And I start witnessing kids start having meltdowns, right? Because they can't answer the problem right away. And then we start, when we had a problem, I bring the parent and I talk to the parent. Well, my child never had problems, you know what I'm saying, in their whole academic career. I'm like, ma'am, your child in the 3rd grade. We laughing, but people think they never got a C. Like, wait, time out. Your child is in the 3rd grade. We have to make sure our kids understand that it's okay to fail. You know what I'm saying? And that's one of the reasons his lecture about myocomedics is important, because it allows you to work through a problem, and you're gonna have to go back to the beginning of the problem because you messed up. Okay, I messed up here. Boom. Because part of that problem solving skill is part of our self-development. It's part of our self-mastery.
And with traditional education, they've completely taken out the critical thinking and problem solving skills. It's about memorization, it's about programming. We are inputting information into students at a fast pace so they can just regurgitate it out for the time being to pass a standardized test.
Right.
Typically multiple choice where you really don't have to know information. That's not testing your knowledge. That's testing whether or not you can circle or the right letter. But it's just,
It's a frustrating matter. There's no doubt. It's a frustrating matter.
Go ahead.
When I hear that,
He ain't like it.
you know, the thing that really sticks with me is that failure doesn't mean that you are failure. You know, that's the key for me, you know, because, you know, by me as coming up in the public schools, even though period, what was in my family, because everybody in my school, you know, my reading wasn't as good as theirs, but my thinking was faster than theirs. I wasn't thinking on the level of them. So when you fail me a grade or something like that, I wasn't comfortable with failing. You understand? See, we have to make sure that our children are not, you failed this test doesn't mean that you have to fail every test. You understand what I'm saying?
Right, that's right.
So when I gravitated to boxing, you understand? Do you think that I've never been knocked down? Do you think that I've never got caught? So that people would see me at a certain age, because we wasn't released out of that cage, but for 3 years of fighting, we wasn't allowed to fight, you know, openly. But by the time we got to that development, like in a dojo, you understand, when that pain comes great, because you think, I didn't get that move off. You understand? Next time you'll be able to identify with that move. I see people that come out of colleges that went through 4 years, came out academically high, but they're scared. Tell me, why are you scared? And they just educated you. Huh? Because it's foreign to them going into this system of white supremacy, first and foremost.
To answer the question that you posed, why is certain people sitting where they're sitting, given their ignorance and absolute stupidity?
Right.
But it goes to a principle that we need to understand, and that dovetails into what you were saying. It doesn't matter the intelligence of with them. If that person will serve them and their interests, they're going to support them.
That's right.
To
That's right.
the nth degree.
Hey,
Whereas we will take every small, incident of imperfection to completely attack, decimate, maybe destroy one another.
Right. Blow it up. Well, you know, in the white world, they refer to it as the Peter principle. The Peter's principle. That means you rise to the level. Yeah, you rise to the level of your.
Rise to the highest level of your competence.
And in his case, I couple. I'm sorry.
When I went to school, I was good on everything, reading, writing, spelling, and everything except mathematics. I was good on everything, but that was it. Mathematics. I wasn't a failure, so I got passed on what I know.
Brother Kwame, what I found out, because I'm a substitute teacher,
Right.
but what I tell the students, if you have not been taught math properly, that's why so many of our children say, I don't like math. My next question is why they can't come up with an answer. Then my reply is, because you haven't been taught math properly. And I said, that's the key. So at the school where I am, a lot of the students, they can't do algebra. And I tell them, I don't do algebra, I do business math. But we have a brother there that's the in-house sub-teacher, very good at algebra. He can break it down to where those Caucasian teachers refuse, and I mean refuse, to break it down. He can break it down in like 5 or 10 minutes. They know what they're doing. I have one young lady told me she didn't have a math brain. I told her no such thing as a math brain.
Math brain.
But what I did suggest to her was, and this is true, I asked her, because she's an African American student, I asked one of the African students, asked her nicely, and if they refuse, you go to the next one. So one did refuse. The second one sat down and broke it down to her. Within 5 minutes, the girl could do every last one of her problems. And I tell parents all the time too, because I tell the students, do not go to the school and tell those teachers, I do not want my kids on their cell phone. Because in our schools, Commonwealth Public, in our charter schools, the kids can have their cell phones on with the earplugs on I don't allow it.
Right.
I don't allow it because, like I tell the students, if you have your earphones on, you can't hear what the teacher's saying, so you haven't learned anything that day.
And that's it.
So they know when I walk into that classroom, the first thing they do, the boys pull up their pants and everybody take the earphones out.
It's allowed in the
Oh, no, it's allowed. It's allowed.
Yeah,
It's
it is,
allowed.
yeah.
Yeah, because we got every last one of our students got Chromebooks.
That's another thing I don't understand either. At the school where I work, they have Chromebooks, but a lot of parents don't know, the young parents don't know, students don't have books.
Mm-hmm.
Don't take books home.
Or pencil.
Or pencil. So once the kids get home, they have assignment on the Chromebook, but they got $400 and $500 tennis shoes on.
Mhm.
They don't have a computer.
We're in
Internet access. So there's a lot of problems, but I'm going to get together.
Right, it's $400 or $500 pair of shoes, no computer.
Okay. A couple of days, this is a couple of days ago, and it just for us to think about, I had a conversation with Brother Wakesa, Baba Wakesa. And we were talking about the difficulty I have with one student in tutoring. And he offered a really great suggestion, and I just want us to think about it. He said, come up with a grand success story of that student in your mind.
Mhm.
Put a story in your mind of how you see that child in the future succeed. And have that. He said, because you love her, you have a story in your mind based on her behavior of how she's going to be. And that child can pick that up.
Yeah.
Have a story in your mind alone of how though Miss Key is going to succeed in the future. When she does some of this stuff that she does, then if you know she's going to succeed, you can visualize her succeeding, you will say, okay, I understand. However, let's move forward. He said that will help me change my attitude, and the child will pick up on that.
Mhm.
I thought that was, for me, that was good, because I struggle with one child. And Kwame has heard my struggles. Kimba has heard my struggles. I can't even get in my car before I'm calling one of them to say, what do I do? But I thought that was a good suggestion for us to have success stories in our head for our children. Some of them, you have that story, but the challenging ones, so often we don't. And I thought that was just to throw that out at you guys. I don't know what you think about it. Shoot holes in it. Tell me I'm going off in the wrong direction. But that is something that he suggested. I thought it was good.
I think that that's a good idea. Just to go with what Kim said, rather than to tell our children that they're smart, we should tell them that they're capable, that they can. That but they still have to do the work,
Right.
And put in and go through the process and acquire the knowledge and the skills, and the abilities. But the baseline, the capability is there.
Elder Barbara had said that the teachers would refuse to break it down. And I'm convinced it's because they're not confident in understanding how to do it. So for me, back to medical education and that whole arena, because I feel like that's very important. When you go to your doctor or your practitioner or whoever you go to see, seek that counsel, a lot of times when you ask questions, they start to respond emotionally. Yeah, because they don't know. Because they haven't been taught to understand. And I know there might be some physicians in the room that, and have done it on their own, but the education that our students are receiving goes back to not having that critical thinking and problem solving. And when you try to memorize information,
and you have a person sitting in front of you and it doesn't look like what it is in the textbook, it just doesn't work like that.
I'm gonna bring up something. It's your wife. Hey, how you doing? One thing that I see as a teacher in the public school system, and it's very frustrating to me because I teach at the 7th grade level, 8th grade, and I teach high school and I coach. What I'm hearing everybody say is, one, people have gifts in different places, and we should foster that gift. But where you're not gifted, there's a tenacity that lacks. You don't have the mindset to have the tenacity to get at the math because you don't like it. You just shut down. I'm in the education system. I teach PE. Now you think in PE it is for play, this, that, and the third. So even in a simple game situation where everybody's having fun, somebody gets out, they cheated. But somebody loses, they cheated. I ain't playing no more. Well, how about, okay, you lost that round or you didn't win. How can you learn from what you just went through to be better? So there's this particular game that everybody just goes bananas when we play it. No, not that. It's called Monarch Tag, and the people that process and have a tenacity, they figure out how to not get out the next time we play. And the people that don't have that tenacity in them, they'll just, oh, I got out again. I don't like this game. They cheat. So-and-so did this. So-and-so did this. Well, I mean, what are you going to do to get better in math? You didn't get it. Your teacher, you're not understanding it. What are you going to do to get better? I can testify that this man spends a lot of hours doing math. So he's always working at getting better. Anybody that's gaining mastery has to have a tenacity at something. And we're not, I don't know where it is, where in our culture that tenacity is lost, but it's not there like it should be. Our children lack, a lot of our children lack the tenacity that's needed to be successful in and be well-rounded. We can have tenacity to play that game for 5 hours, but when you ask them to go ahead and write this essay, well, I don't feel like it. That's doing too much. So that's too hard. That's too much. Well, I mean, so pushing our children towards excellence, they have to know that everything's not going to be a passing grade. Right. You're going to have to fail, but that's a part of the process of you growing to get better. And I coach varsity sports at the high school level, and it's a real challenge to get our girls to step up to be better than good. Good is, good is good enough, and good is the enemy of great.
Part of that comes from they thought about improving at home. And then you got a situation where it's a single parent or if it's both parents, the other parent agreeing with the other. You understand? I go through that a lot at home myself. So I'm saying I can be teaching the proper way and the other one not teaching the proper way, but it's becoming hard. The child is frustrated. They don't know how to see, and they looking like they don't decipher the true way of learning. Right. A lot of these parents, they lost a big child. That's right. That's true. That's true. You know what I'm saying? So it got a lot to do with what's, like me and her were just talking earlier. It's got a lot to do with what's being put into you. And the parent got the foster care before a teacher can foster. Actually, the mother is the first teacher of the child. Right. I have to tell a lot of people this. When I'm out with the final call, I got to tell a lot of these women this because a lot of them lost. This real messed up because it's like man versus machine. It's this technology that's destroying these mothers, these fathers, and these children. You know what I'm saying? Yes. Technology, should I say? Yeah. That's a big issue. Yeah, it's a challenge. You look at the school supplies now. We got a lot of this. Yes. They don't have to get up. So use a remote control. You ain't got to turn the TV no more. You lazy now. Cell phone. You don't got to get up and go get the phone. I mean, it's just a lot of laziness. So,
but now I would challenge you on that. I would challenge that because I'm gonna say this. Because sometimes I hear out of us coming some of the same talk that I heard when I was young. You know what I'm saying? How many people here use lighters? Use what? Lighters. if you want to fire her? How many of y'all use a lighter? That's being lazy because you too lazy to go get the goddamn stone to do it like that. You know what I'm saying? So, huh? You know what I'm saying? Oh, see, even with the lighters, it was matches. How about cassette tapes? How many people use CDs or MP3s? You know what I'm saying? Or you could be the dude with the Apple hat that still got the 8-track in his car. You know what I'm saying? So we got to understand that technology is like, we're making the choices. And I want to go back to what the sister said about the stories, because this is a critical piece that we don't cover. Now, this is why I do folk tales for grown folks, because I want to have real talk with grown folks about the importance of stories. We look at these fairy tales, we look at these folk tales, and we think that they was created for kids. They were not created for kids. They was created for us, so that we can have the stories to shape our reality. You know what I'm saying? So now, and I'm gonna ask you this: do anybody remember when they went after Osama bin Laden? What was the main thing they was trying to kill with Osama bin Laden? His narrative. If you listen to, we got to kill the narrative. They didn't care about killing him. They wanted to kill the story, because it's the stories that gives us the blueprint on how to live our lives. It's a story of Jesus. It's a story of Muhammad. It's the story that comes out of Kemet that shapes and molds our lives. So when we start taking control of our life story, and we start taking control of our children's story, and we start taking control of the stories we tell ourselves, we take our power.
Now we tell one another, because it's not, we can say all day that the parents aren't helping our children or feeding into our children, but what are we enduring throughout the day, especially if we don't work for ourselves or within our community? If we're out there all day, community that was not created for us to prosper, how in the world will we have a cup full enough to pour into our children when we come home at night?
But we have to. This is one of my personal frustration. I listen to the talk, and we talk about, how the white folks do this, but we have the same, we talk negative about ourselves.
That's right.
Listen, how many negative things have we said? The mothers aren't doing this, our teachers aren't doing this, the children are, we're going to the lowest level rather than looking at the successes that we have had as a people in spite of it all.
Say that.
And we need to speak of our success more often. We need to, our children need to hear us talk with pride every day about, okay, you got 2 F's, but you got a B and a C. You did good, and we're going to work on this. We're going to get the 2 to work on this F. But we're always going to beat them down because of the lowest thing. We as a people, we don't have for ourselves. Yes, we do. We have businesses. We are lawyers, doctors, Indian chief, but we don't sing our own praises. And we need to do more of that. We need to talk more positively about ourselves on a daily basis.
What's your name?
Isatu.
Now, what she just said, Wakesa has been trying to get us to take that up. I know the last meeting we had here, I brought the meeting to a stop because I was done with listening to us beat each other down. I said, let us talk about where we're succeeding. I mean, the fact that we have this spot right here is a big success for us. And then the question becomes, so what are we going to do with it? Turn our success into more success. I mean, we've pulled off one of the best Kwanzaa celebrations, I might say, in the nation.
All right.
You say might, I say we did.
And that came with some work. But yes, very much so, collective work. And I ain't gonna leave out the responsibility, because when people took something on, they made it a point to fulfill what they took on. And so, speaking of which,
okay. we want to thank this session. This has been really, really good. We want to continue this conversation, but we also want to close right now. We want to have a closing circle. Then we can continue our conversation, probably some food in the back, until, or the front, or the cafeteria, until our next full session begins at 2 o'clock. 2, correct there? Or any other instructions? Oh, are there any announcements? I want to put one thing out here.
Are there any announcements? Oh, God. Kuumba.
I first of all want to thank everybody here, especially for giving me the Gye-Nyame Award.
You missed the $10,000 though.
Well, that's more important than $10,000 because it came from the community. I just wanted to make an announcement where I want to have a conversation about how we can carve out a bit of land here in Columbus to create international market district, which we're working on that in the Linden area. Our community is becoming more and more international, and I think one thing that we fail to see is it's not white and black anymore. We're more international. I think we need to embrace that and start to build on that, how we can create collective work and responsibility, cooperative economics, how we can use the Nguzo Saba as a way to sustain ourselves. So I just want to have a meeting. I'm going to invite everybody over to New Harvest. We'll provide food and refreshments. But to have that important conversation, because I think that's the biggest conversation we need to have. Once this whole celebration is over, what's our next steps? So going into the next year, how do we build on the success of this celebration, then start to work with those who are within our culture? And I think as an individual, I could speak, but I think if we work together collectively, become one voice, how we can actually just kind of show our young folks that we have the ability to build businesses. We have the ability to do for ourselves, but it's not going to happen just on an individual level. It's going to have to happen on that. So that's all I would. And thank you again for the time.
Okay, we're gonna close. One thing I wanted to put the name in the circle, and that is for Elder Margarita. We need to really send a positive energy to her. Elder Margarita has been in the hospital since December 4th.
What? Wow.
She right now is at Ross Heart Hospital. She was at OSU East. She moved to Ross Heart Hospital a week ago. And so we just need to send real energy to her.
If you want to call, you don't have to have a room number. They go by her name. Because when I called, I gave the room number and they said, I need her name, Margarita Glenn.
Is Margarita?
Glenn.
Glenn.
L-E-N.
Okay.
Okay, with that, let's have our closing circle and then we can continue our conversation. See if we got a little bit of food around. Go from there.
Give your arm a break. Yeah. Let me tell some people off.
Make sure we come connect over here.
Connect over here with the.
Make sure we connect over here.
All right, family. I'm noticing you're not here. I know. I'm taking names. I'm taking names. I know who's not here.
Good.
All right. Peace.